Paddlers and kayakers were working their way across the 4-mile-wide lake. On the banks of the river, small groups of picnickers and sun worshippers were resting on blankets and brightly colored towels. The boaters, the fishermen, the picnickers, and the sunbathers had no way of knowing that almost 30 miles upstream, without warning, 9 of the 11 44-foot-wide concrete and steel gates comprising the massive old river control structure had begun rising, freeing the pent-up power of the mighty Mississippi. Billions of gallons of water surged through the opening gates, following the natural course of the river, creating a massive wave of churning energy. The Army Corps of Engineers had built the ORCS in the 1950s to control the Mississippi River, to prevent it from joining the Atchafalaya Channel and carving a new, shorter, steeper path directly to the Gulf of Mexico. It had mostly successfully fought nature, keeping the Great Muddy on its historic path between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Designed partially by Hans Albert Einstein, son of the great mathematician, it had corralled the Mississippi River system, ensuring it would remain the world's most significant navigable river highway. The shift supervisor in the control room made a heroic but futile effort to override the system, trying desperately to manually close the gates. There was no response. Finally, cursing with the frustration of a doomed pilot in the last seconds of flight, he activated the emergency warning system. "Oh my God," he whispered, watching the raging waters overwhelming the Atchafalaya. The people along the banks of the river, or at play on Flat Lake and other nearby lakes, may have noticed the leaves of the cypress trees rustling. Some of them certainly would have felt a new urgency in the gentle current. In Morgan City, a broken traffic signal had caused an irritating traffic backup, and several motorists began honking. Those people on the river heard it first, a growing rumble, as if a fleet of jumbo jets was thundering across the sky. Then they would have felt the river rising. The massive wave hit Morgan City first. Within minutes, the curious trickle of water in the streets had become a flood, catching people in their cars or in shops, overturning trucks and buses, and smashing them into storefronts. An unstoppable rage carrying tons of debris and bodies into Flat Lake. Billions of gallons of water barreled forward, playing in this new freedom, racing toward the Gulf, changing the river's course forever, carrying with it everything in its path. Boats were capsized as easily as toys in a bathtub. Fishermen, sunbathers, and picnickers were swept up and carried downriver. Within a half-hour, Morgan City ceased to exist, as did several smaller towns in the floodplain. Highways, railroad tracks, bridges, and gas and oil pipelines crossing the Atchafalaya were destroyed, disrupting the nation's flow of natural gas. The lack of water flowing into the Mississippi forced refineries, petrochemical plants, and 2 nuclear power plants to shut down immediately, leaving millions of people with only emergency power sources. As sediment flowed into that river, barges carrying vital grain and materials to the Gulf sunk into the mud. By the time the floodwaters reached the Gulf of Mexico, much of its strength had dissipated. A news helicopter in the air to film a police preparedness drill followed a 16-wheeler for miles as it bounced off buildings as easily as a pinball, hitting bumpers, until it finally crashed into a pleasure boat and settled on its wheels in the middle of a parking lot. Washed-out roads made it impossible for rescue, recovery, and repair crews to get near the damage for several days. Initial estimates put the number of dead and injured at more than 23,000. It would be several months before the roads and energy systems were mostly restored, at an estimated cost of $45 billion. Friday, July 11th, New York City. It was 20 minutes after 2, in the permanent twilight of the Lincoln Tunnel. Its 3 tubes had been cut into the bedrock beneath the Hudson River beginning in 1934 to connect New York to New Jersey and the west of the nation, as Fiorello LaGuardia had proudly announced. Not unusually, the 2 lanes of traffic in the northern tube leaving Manhattan were backed up to a standstill. Apparently, a rental van had stalled just before exiting into Weehawken.